We are filming in Manhattan today. My name is Monk Rowe with the Hamilton College Jazz Archive. I'm very pleased to have Louis Hayes with me, one of jazz's great drummers.
Monk, it's a pleasure being here.
Band leader and composer on occasion. It's really a pleasure to speak with you. I was fortunate to see you at the Iridium last night, and some of those tempos were just, talk about hard bop. I mean, very, very hard.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun, and especially starting off the night like that. Now, when I was much younger, Freddie Hubbard and myself, we used to do that. What was the tune we used to play? Just One of Those Things. We used to start off like that. That was nightly, just to get yourself loosened up and get yourself together. Staggering pace, I mean, fast as you could go. And really challenging.
I feel sorry for the bass player sometime, actually, when it goes on and on. But you expend an awful lot of energy, too.
Yes.
But have you ever had a problem with keeping up that for very long?
Well, actually, no, I don't, because I practice, and I warm up every day before I come to a job, and I like practicing. Now, when I was a youngster, naturally I had problems keeping up, but once I grew up a little bit and came to, you know, start getting a little older and getting a little more experience, and I got to the point where I can handle it, I've never had a problem since, because I've always stayed in shape. And when you practice for a long period of time, then it's not that big of a deal. But naturally, and I don't spend too much energy for as moving around physically, my head and body and everything. I'm more or less a person that just deals with less motion as possible. You know.
I notice on occasion it looks like you're singing or speaking to yourself.
Yes,
as you play.
Now, see, I noticed that on video cameras. I never knew it was coming out like that until somebody videoed me, and that is something that just happens. You know, it's just.
You're not saying anything specific then?
No.
Maybe? Okay.
No. Although sometimes I might be thinking about, I'll be glad when this guy stops solo. I mean, I'd like to go see out there. But it's just a facial, I think it's just a facial. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes it always looked like you were mouthing the melody with the guys too, which may have happened. But I always like to watch that kind of, that group. I mean, this wasn't a group that works together a lot.
No.
But on occasion, you guys would lay into something, and I'm curious. You know, I was wondering, like, well, was that rehearsed? Or is that a lick that's kind of standard with the song? Like I wrote one down and it went ba-da, ba-da, ba-ba, ba-da. And you were playing that with the horns and behind somebody's solo. I can't recall the tune though.
I don't know what it could have been, because we didn't rehearse. But it is music, this art form, when you know the guys, it does have a language. And everyone who can play on it, you know, knowing each other, play on a certain level, you know the language to this art form. Yeah. So you can do things that the audience might looks like it's been rehearsed, but actually we didn't rehearse. This is the first time, actually, since we've been on this job that we played together. And McPherson, he lives in San Diego, and it was a bad. Had a lot of problems with the weather when he was coming in, so he didn't arrive until, we started open Tuesday, but he arrived Wednesday. Oh. So we did not do any rehearsing.
Okay. Well, you grew up in a pretty musical atmosphere. Detroit was a good city for music in general.
Yes. Yes, it really was. My father played piano and drums, and my mother played piano. And I started out playing piano. Naturally started out playing piano. Most kids started out playing, you know, because piano was in their homes all, you know, mostly. So I did that for a while. But the piano to me was, at 5 or 6, it wasn't fun. You know, I think doing anything, if it's too complicated or not fun, and someone has to more or less, as a job, make you do it, that causes a problem. And the piano caused me a problem. But drums were there in the house also, and I started just playing drums, and drums were fun to me. It was actually fun. And I realized that kids that were older than I was playing drums, how much difficulty they were having doing certain things. And I looked at them, and it was easy for me. So that made me, I felt good about that. You know, because I could accomplish things real fast that they were having a lot of problems with. And then I had, now he's passed away, a cousin that he played drums very well. He didn't come to New York. If he'd have came to New York in the 40s, he would have been very well known. His name was Clarence Stamps. But he didn't, and he started teaching me. And he taught me, I learned a lot from him. That's how I really started getting together, was him teaching me these things.
Yeah. Was there a point, let's say in high school, that you decided that you were going to be a musician for a living?
Yes, yes. I say I was about 15. I had been playing before then, but by the time I was 15, I knew that that was what I wanted to do, was play.
And was this time you played with Yusef Lateef?
Yes.
High school days?
Well, I was, I've been playing much before then. Actually, I had my own group. One day, my mother sent me to help this lady wash her windows. So I went over, and this lady, her husband, was managing a teenage club. So we had got in this conversation, and so I told him I had a group, so he hired me to bring a group, and that's when I started. But I was playing before then, little dances, and they used to have, what do you call it, street dances, where they would block off the street, and people would, things like that. And at school I played. But when I first started putting the band together was then. I played at this teenage club in Detroit, and I was about maybe 15 or 16 then. And then from there, in Detroit it was so, it was a very competitive place. And the older musicians were they were sort of on such a high level. The guys that I was looking at, the musicians that I was looking at, like Tommy Flanagan and like I say, Yusef and so many of them, Kenny Burrell. But they didn't know they didn't realize that I played drums though, because I never would play around them. I had my own compadres that I was beating up on. So anyway, I played a couple of teenage clubs. Then with Yusef, I was working in this club, nightclub, and I wasn't supposed to be in the club because you're supposed to be 21 to work in nightclubs, and I was about 17, 18. But this club owner, he liked me a lot. So when Yusef got the job, he said to Yusef, you can have the job, but Louis Hayes, you have to take Louis with the job. Yusef didn't know me at the time. So he came over to my mother's house. I was staying with at the time, and says, you got the job, but I'm going to give you a 6 weeks trial, which was fantastic. 6 weeks. That was great.
Yeah.
So that was Yusef, and Curtis Fuller was playing trombone, and Hugh Lawson with piano, and Ernie Farrell was the bassist. And we went in, I went in with them, and I had a wonderful learning period until they found out how old I was eventually. And then that was the end of that job. But right after that, I had another job in another club. But after that, I was in this place called the West End, which was a place in Detroit that guys, it was an after-hour place. And Kenny Burrell, actually, his wife at the time, her name was Laura, and I think it was his first wife, and her family was owned this restaurant, and it was an after-hour place, a place that had good food and a place that musicians came after their job at night, their regular job at 2 o'clock, and played all night till 5 or 6 in the morning. And there was another place, there was a place also that musicians who came from New York and thought they were on such a high level, they would invite them out to this club, and unless you were very special, you would get embarrassed out there, you know. So I was playing out there this one night, and Kenny Burrell and Doug Watkins, who had left, and they were living here in New York, but they were back home for whatever reason. And we had opportunity to sit in and play with them that night. So when they came back to New York, the Jazz Messengers was disbanding, and Horace Silvers was starting his group, and Art Blakey was keeping the name, the Jazz Messengers, and they were, you know, separating. So Doug was appearing with Horace at the time. So Arthur Taylor was the original drummer when he first started, but Horace, so understand, and Arthur, they didn't get along at all. Too great together. So Doug Watkins says, well, I know a person, let's get the baby boy out of Detroit. So Horace called me, and I thought one of my buddies were playing a little joke on me, you know. So I didn't think it was really Horace Silvers calling me up, you know. Yeah. I was 19 years old, I didn't think he was calling me up. But it was Horace, so that's how I was in 56, in August of 56. So that's how I first came to New York.
And you have played, well, you played on Sister Sadie with him.
Yes.
And all the great tunes over the years. Was his style semi-funky at the time something that you had experienced before, or have any trouble assimilating to?
Now, Horace, I learned so much from him, but we were in tune, and it wasn't any problem from the beginning. It was very comfortable, very relaxed. We would rehearse at his apartment, and he had these different albums that he asked me to listen to, and that was very experience, because these albums that he asked me to listen to, Art Blakey was on, and so that was a big challenge for me, listening to Art Blakey, and that was what I was supposed to replace. But no, Horace was very easy going, and I really didn't have, I wasn't uncomfortable at all. It took me actually a little time to really start growing, become where I was able to get strong enough really to feel comfortable handling things. With Horace, the albums at the time they called them, I could really see my growth in the albums that I made with Horace. I could really tell, but you know, from the first one until I did 5 with him before I left in '59, and I could really see my growth and listen and hear my growth when I was appearing with Horace.
Yeah. You went on to play with whom I consider one of the great saxophonists of all time, and Cannonball, and record some of Nat's great tunes.
Yes.
And how did that gig come about?
Well, in the original Birdland on 52nd Street, I don't remember which night it was, but every week it was like a session night. Monday night or one of those nights like that. So this night, I was appearing there with Hank Mobley, tenor saxophone, and Booker Little, trumpet, Bobby Timmons, bass, and Sam Jones. Bobby Timmons, piano, and Sam Jones, bass. And Sam was in Cannon's first group. So Sam, we had a very nice time. And Sam and myself, that was the first time we played together, but we were very compatible. So Sam asked me, would I consider joining Cannonball's band? So I started thinking about it. So we went back and forth between, because with Horace, we were so close, And the band at the time was, we were very comfortable with each other. Because, after a period of time, that's what happens. But I was considering making a change. I was young, and I was thinking about doing something else. So that sounded very interesting to me. So eventually I did. Mm-hmm. And I'm very glad that I made the change. That was another experience. And Cannonball and Nat and Sam and myself, we became such good friends, and we were so close musically. And we were on stage and off. I mean, the best of friends. We hung out all the time. And with Cannon, we got to be so close. I mean, with that group, it was like a family. We were together all the time. Even when we came home, when we came back to New York, when we had parties, the band was the first ones that was invited, the band and their families. That's who we played with and we partied with, between the record company, who was on Keep News at the time, and John Levy was taking care of the management business. So we were just that close, that kind of a group. I know Miles used to ask me every once in a while to come and join his group at that time. And I really wanted to, Miles Davis. Jeez. Yeah. But I couldn't do that because Cannonball and Nat, and we just were too close.
Wow. Did the band rehearse at all?
Yes, we rehearsed, but it wasn't like Horace, though. Now, Horace rehearsed quite a bit. And when he went into the studio, Horace, we had played the compositions, so all the little things were worked out, what we were going to do. But with Cannon, it wasn't like that. Cannon was more spontaneous. We rehearsed, we had it together, but everybody was so talented, it was more spontaneous. We didn't rehearse all the time like that.
Did you have a feeling when you did some of the tunes like Work Song and Jive Samba that these were going to be hits? I'm not sure how you define a hit in the jazz world, but
yes.
Did you go away with a feeling like, man, we got something there?
No, I didn't. And sometimes, I know myself, sometimes, I enjoyed playing, good music. I always enjoyed it, especially when you're playing with creative people like Cannon and Nat and then Yusuf and Charles Lloyd and Sam Jones. But sometimes I thought the stuff was kind of square, especially the Work Song.
You thought it was square, yeah.
I mean, especially, You
want me to go bump, bump?
Yeah. I don't feel like, I'm glad with this is, we had to play this every night. Doggone it.
That's great to hear. I mean, you just never know.
Yeah. Yeah, because I was much younger, and I wanted to be, I'm trying my best to be as creative as possible. And some of those things, I had to learn about business. Music is a business. And some of those, I had to, kind of start getting that together and learning about that, because I was looking at it, just for fun and being creative. And I wasn't looking at things that way a lot of times at that, time.
I mean, so that's a learning experience in itself.
Yes.
If you want to be successful, sometimes you can't play exactly the way you had envisioned.
Yes.
At certain times, I guess.
At certain times.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you tell me anything about this album? Was there anything that Cannonball and Nancy that stuck out in your memory at all?
Well, this was another thing that just, well, I would say that Nancy being from Ohio, I think it's Columbus, it was a club there, had some numbers, like 502 or something like that. And I had appeared there with Horace Silvers, and actually in 58 or something like that time. And I met Nancy there. And Cannon had appeared there also with Miles Davis, and he knew Nancy Wilson, and they got to be close during that time. So when Nancy came to New York, she got in touch with Cannonball, and she became very close with Cannonball and Nat and Nat's wife, Ann. They became very close. So this record date was something where we didn't rehearse a lot during this date. we put together things. We put this together in the studio most of the time. We didn't have a big rehearsal, and it just came together. But it was so comfortable that it was another person in Chicago, a disc jockey. His name was Sid McCoy, and Daddy-O, something. There was two of them, but Sid McCoy especially. We all were very close, and Sid McCoy really played this album a lot. And Cannonball and Nancy, we had such a rapport, and people, this was an album that just took off, and everybody loved it. And so we did a lot of concerts together, places Cannonball and Nancy. And it started out, it was amazing, it started out like that, Cannonball and Nancy. We did a lot of things together, we had a great time, a lot of history. But then I noticed the sign changed to Nancy Wilson Cannonball. That's what was, you know, very interesting. But yeah, that was the relationship with Nancy. That was a wonderful, great relationship.
Yeah, it was tight arrangements, you know, even though you say that they were a bit spontaneous. But,
yeah.
I mean, you could tell that you and Sam were like this.
Right.
What was it, Joe Zawinul replaced Bobby Timmons?
No,
Or
no, I think he replaced Victor Feldman.
And Wynton Kelly was in there somewhere
Wynton
too.
Kelly, but he wasn't actually with the group, but we recorded together on, I can't recall the name of the album at the time, but we did record together. I think Bobby Timmons was the original pianist, and then Barry Harris was there, that's right. Barry Harris was there for a period of time. And then Victor Feldman. And then really the major pianist was Joe Zawinul. He was there for, rest in endurance, he was there for years, at least 10 years.
Yeah, yeah. What was he like to work with?
Joe was wonderful.
Yeah.
Joe was, when he first joined the band, Joe was kind of nervous because he hadn't been in that situation before. He had been appearing with Dinah Washington, which was, Joe's, his facilities were marvelous, but that was a little different, accompanying a vocalist naturally.
Right.
But this was, with Cannonball, it was every person for itself. You had to be very creative, as you know, I mean, you know, you had to be, everybody's on their own. So Sam and myself, we used to have these meetings because we were so close, you know, friends. So we would have these meetings and sit in the room at night after the job and discuss these things. And Joe, you know, like I said, he was a little nervous at first, but it worked out just wonderful, worked out just fine.
Good writer.
Oh, great, great. And a marvelous, interesting person. You know, he's from Vienna.
Yeah.
And it's sort of him as a person. Joe was a very, we got along so well together. We were very close, good friends.
Great. Well, you went from there to kind of a different situation with Oscar Peterson.
Yes.
How did the piano trio differ from the Cannonball thing?
That was, for me, Oscar being on the highest level a person can be on this art form. You know, Oscar was, and he was like that. He was very consistent, like that every night. And he's such a, everything is so great with Oscar. Him as a person, the way he carried the trio, being around, being in his company, and everything was a great experience. But I wasn't as comfortable with Oscar as I was with Horace, our canon, because with Horace and canon it was horns, and I had my freedom to be creative and then play and then do exactly what I wanted to do at all times. It was never, I had no restrictions on me at all with Horace, our canon. Anything that I felt like doing, go for it. You know, I mean, just do what you feel like, please. You know, but with Oscar, it was more or less like, how should I put this, star co-star situation.
Yeah.
Where he was leading, and he wanted the rhythm section to accompany him a certain way. So that was more of a problem for me, because for the first time I had these restrictions, and that, I mean, playing with him was a great experience, but that did, I felt limit my creativity to a point. So it was harder for me to deal with Oscar because it was so demanding, but then again, I had to really think about what I was doing more.
Yeah, and that maybe I have to limit some things that I would like to do.
Right. Yes.
Did this have any play on the fact that shortly after that you became a co-leader and leading your own groups?
Yes.
Said like,
because I with Oscar, I did it twice. Went back when the first time after Cannon was 65, and I went with him again, and I think something like 71, 72 or something around that time. But before, now Freddie Hubbard and myself, we were very good friends. We're the same age. So we lived in the same building in Brooklyn. So we were creating, he was upstairs and I was downstairs. So we were with each other and recreating and making music all the time. So that was something that I really was enjoying doing at the time. And actually, playing with Oscar that's where I was. That was my job. But with Freddie, we were having so much fun, and so I wasn't making that much money with Freddie, but we were making history. We were having a lot of fun, me and Freddie Hubbard. So I was doing that all the time, and we had this group we called the Communicators. It was Freddie Hubbard, and Joe Henderson, and Kenny Barron, pianist, and Herbie Lewis was the bassist originally. So Freddie and myself, over the years, we played together for all these years, and we still doing it. That's what I was doing. But after that, was Cedar Walton, who lived around the corner in Brooklyn from us, and he had been in Europe with his quartet. And when he came back, he said to me one day that this person from Holland, whose name was Wim Witt, asked him about me bringing a group over. So at the time, I didn't have a group. So I put one together. I got Junior Cook and Ronnie Matthews and Stafford James, and then we got Woody Shaw. So it was the Lewis Hayes Junior Cook Quintet featuring Woody Shaw. And that's the way that came about. And I got this also, I knew this lady, her name was Maxine Craig at the time, who eventually was Maxine Gordon, Dexter Gordon's wife.
oh,
But she was managing it. We went to Europe, and that's how I started having my own bands. That was the first one.
was it a different experience to be making decisions? And what kind of decisions did you have to make as leader?
Well, musically, I was in there making decisions, and just I felt very comfortable doing that. In that role, I always felt comfortable with the guys, and they felt comfortable with me. And I had this lady, trying to a management team. So. One of the problems is, I feel, is naturally working all the time is a major problem. But in that situation, everybody really getting along. It seems like it's very hard sometimes to get a group where everybody's really compatible over a long period of time. because we were young, and people have these different ideas about things and directions they want to go in, and so that can cause different things to make everybody makes changes. So that's what happened. We were together for a period of time, and then it was time for to make a change. So Woody got his own group, and I made a change and got a quartet at the time with Frank Strozier and Harold Mayburn, and Stafford James stayed there for a period of time. And now that quartet, both things were very creative. I enjoyed the group with Junior and Woody and Junior. Woody is so talented. Woody Shaw, boy, he was such a great player. And he recorded this tune that I had written for my wife entitled Nisha. And he played it so beautifully. I mean, that's one of my favorite things by Woody. And with Frank Strozier, he was so talented. Because that group, I mean, he's just... But that group, well, I felt like that group should have really taken off. But business, for some reason, wasn't taken care of right with that one. So eventually, we disbanded. It came apart.
I'm curious, this was mid-60s?
Yeah, no, this was into the 70s.
Okay. Was it kind of a tough decade for jazz, wasn't it?
Exactly right.
Yeah, and there was a lot of different things happening. Of course, you had come out of Coltrane, and you had some free jazz, and you had soul jazz. Did this band have a definition of what you played? So when your manager went to try to find work for you, I guess what I'm trying to say is, did you label yourself?
No, we didn't label ourselves, but we were, the group with the quartet with Frank and Harold, we were so actually dynamic and so much power that we knew that, you know, we had this ability to perform on such a level that we felt like this is it, this should work. But because when we would appear opposite anyone, they were in serious trouble. I mean, the group was very dynamic. It was Harold Mayburn. It was something to look at, and he was so percussive.
Yeah.
And Frank played. I mean, Frank is so knowledgeable on that saxophone. Until when that group broke up, Frank was so disappointed, he stopped playing. And he started playing piano, and naturally he was a school teacher, so he was teaching school, and he was trying to get out of that teaching school thing. And he went back to teaching. He was so went back to teaching school. He was so disappointed. So he gave music up, but he started playing the piano. And actually, that was in I think the late 70s or 80s, or something in the early 80s or 70s. And he hasn't. I don't think he's ever really got the saxophone and played again since then. He was very disappointed.
Yeah, it's too bad.
Yes.
Well, you recorded some marvelous records, you and Woody, and I wanted to read a quote that someone wrote about you in one of the jazz encyclopedia type things. See if you think this sums you up. It says, Louis Hayes plays in a compelling, forceful style marked by a tendency to push the beat and to goad the soloists with frequent fills.
Yeah, that's,
Okay.
Yes. That's,
all right, good.
Yes, I feel great about that. Yes. Yes, because I came up in a way, the way I felt, I like being a accompanist, but I like doing it on my terms. So, because it's, this art form, I always wanted to play it. One of the reasons is because you can accompany a person, but you can be your own person. You have your own voice in doing that. So that's what I really, one of the things I've always, I mean, wonderful things about this art form, you can get your own voice. You can have your own voice, and that is one of the main things that you are there for, to do things your own way.
Yeah.
So being able to accompany people, I mean, soloing was something that is something that I had facilities, and you just have to do being a drummer. Take solos and things. But originally, I was thinking about accompanying. That's the way I started out playing.
Mm-hmm. Your solo last night in one of the tunes had a great kind of crescendo to it. You know, it sounded like you were playing bebop rhythms, but by the time you were at this impact of almost constant sound, it's like, I don't know how you were doing it, but it was nice.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mark.
Dexter Gordon thing, you had that classic album with him too. That must have been a nice experience.
It really was.
The Vanguard.
Yes, yes. That was a great experience. Ellison and Woody, we had that group, and Dexter was staying in Copenhagen at the time, and also Slide Hamilton was living in Europe. So this lady Maxine, she talked to him about coming back to New York at the time, and Dexter wanted to do that, but he didn't have a group. So when they put that together on, what was it, Columbia? That album?
I think it was, yeah.
Columbia. Dexter we made this live at the Vanguard, and actually that was Louis Hayes, Woody Shaw group. But Dexter, and Dexter, people were such a big thing for Dexter to come back, and so I mean the club was just packed every night, and it was such a warm feeling. It was a great experience, and we did some more things with Dexter during that time. But I'm glad I had opportunity to make that history.
Yeah.
With Dexter at the time.
He certainly had a persona to him.
Oh, he had. That's for sure.
Spoke and just his movements and
exactly
all that.
Right.
Yeah.
Dexter was one of a kind. That's for sure.
Wow. Do you have any opinions about the jazz scene today?
Well, I feel like it's a little more difficult, I feel, for young artists to come here and get that experience working with bands that have great leaders. During when I came along, I mean, everybody feels, you have to come along whenever you're born, but I feel like during that time it was still the last of it, but it was still a time where they had a few bands out here that had great leaders, and you could go from one band to another band and get that experience. Now, speaking to like a person that was my mentor, Joe Jones, Papa Joe, who came with Count Basie here, talking to him, and him speaking to me, actually, when he came here in the 30s with Count Basie, that was the greatest time of all. Now, at least, the big band, and I know he used to tell me when you want to hear some musicians playing, he said when they had those dancing girls in front of the band, he said the guys were really performing during that time. But when I came, it still, it was the big band era had passed, but they still had a lot of major leaders that you could play with and you learn during that time. But now you don't have groups that have this fantastic and leaders on a high level like during that time. So the record companies, they take young guys and give them these contracts and make leaders out of people that I don't think are ready to be leaders.
Yeah.
So it actually, to me, it makes people a lot of times they're too young to have really a strong direction. So to me, it starts lowering the creativity and the art form, because they are making, and they are certain, and they're looking over a lot of people that are still able to really perform on a level there, and they're just going for the youngsters, younger musicians, and I think that is really, to a point, hurting the art form because it's giving people, putting people in positions of that they shouldn't be in.
Right. It's a marketing ploy almost.
Yes,
and
yes.
It's not honoring the music
Exactly.
as much as it should.
Yes, yes. Yes, so I think that is causing a little problem there.
And I guess there's a number of clubs in is not what it used to be. Must be a little harder to. How do you find work?
Well, at this point, I do several things, but mainly I have a group and quintet, and we just recorded 2 CDs on a label TCB, a label out of Switzerland. And one is coming out March 14th, and another one, I'm not sure exactly when they're going to release that one. And I have this management team, the person that books Basil's, James Brown, and Martha Barrett's, who that's my management team. So I'm basically involved with my group, and I'm having a wonderful time with that, and it's growing. So that's my main concern, what I'm dealing with right now, is that quintet.
Who's in the group?
Riley Mullins is the trumpeter, and Abraham Burton, plays tenor saxophone, and Santi Debriano, he's the bassist, and Dave Hazeltine, he's the pianist.
Are you the most experienced guy in the band?
I'm the oldest and the most experienced, actually. I remember when I was a baby boy. That's what changes up. You know, as time goes on, it changes.
Wow. I had one little piece of music to play here.
Oh, that's what I just mentioned to a little while ago.
Now, as a composer, do you sit at the piano and
No, actually,
things?
I wish I could actually, but my piano, my piano facilities are not that great. So I put this tune together in my head, and I sang it in a tape recorder.
I love that. It's great. Yeah.
And it gave me, that was a job. I mean, I had this record date. So I had to think of something, and my wife and myself, and we were close as could be, as could be, but sometimes we would have a little problems as men and women, being married does. Yeah. So I'm trying to do something and think of something to help get me out of this on the good side. So I had to think of this. I had to write this composition and dedicate it to my wife. Very important. Yeah. So I sat there on the couch, and I started putting this together. And I put it together, and after I got it in my head, and I sang it in this machine, I went to the pianist at the time, Ronnie Matthews, and I explained it to him, and he made music out of it, put the chord changes to it. Yep. And that's how it came about.
It's great. I don't wish any more arguments on you, but if they come up with tunes, maybe the good times could lead to a tune too.
Yeah, my wife, after she heard it, she said, "No, you didn't write it. You didn't write that." So I had to go and get that original singing and whistling I was doing, because I had
That's great to have, though.
Yes.
Here's where came from this kind of raw inspiration and what came out of it.
Yes. So actually, after that, she bought me this little thing this little machine that I can just click it on, and I have an idea, just sing right into it.
Yeah. Great. Good story.
Yes.
You like playing overseas?
Yes. Yes. I think it's changed over the years. And I say it like this. Overseas, I was working with especially with my groups, more so than in America or any place else. I was dealing in Europe more than any place, because we would go for long periods of time, 6 weeks, and I had quite a few groups that I've taken over there over the years. Mm-hmm. I had this person that was booking me over there quite a bit, but I got to the point where the venues that I was playing in, I got to the point where I didn't feel like doing that anymore. Playing in clubs, I wanted to do more concerts and things, and I got kind of to the point where I'd done these other things so much that I just didn't want to do it anymore. So I just stopped going over. I haven't been going over lately. Mm-hmm. But I'm going back this summer coming up, because my management team and the record company put some things together, but they're festivals. So I'm going over and do about 4 festivals in this summer coming up, and I'd like that much more.
Great. Just to wrap up here, because I know I have to go to work. Do you have any words of advice from, for a musician just graduated from Berkeley and wants to be enmeshed in the jazz world?
Well, I feel that if you are you know you're good at what you do, it's just something where it just takes being you'll find your way. Everybody, if you can, I always said if you're able to come to New York and be around for a while, you'll find just how you fit in, because there's so many different scenes. So it's just a matter of time. And if you have the talent, I don't think it would be, and that's what you want to do. I think a lot of people are they're not sure of what they want to do.
Yeah.
But when you really feel it, you will survive and you will make it.
Mm-hmm. You got to be willing to pay some dues.
Yes, yes. And that that can be, dues can be, what they call it, can be very, very, very positive, especially when you, I know when I came, I didn't have any responsibilities, no wife and kids, anything like that, so I was free to be able to make mistakes and do things and be with my peers. But when you get to the point where you have a family, that's when it can be a problem. That's dues, I feel, if you get.
It's one thing if you're hungry,
right?
It's something else.
That's right. That's a serious responsibility there.
Right. Well, I want to thank you for your time, and I wish you best of luck with your band and the new CDs coming out and everything in the future.
Thank you very much, Mike. It was my pleasure.
Thank you.